So let's look at the first graph. What I'm trying to explain earlier in class, but we were having lots of network glitch. So for number one, the A is 2. That's 2.5 minus 1.5. Um, that's 4. Minus minus plus, that's 4. So for here, A, the amplitude is 2. And the phase shift D will be 2.5 plus this is 1, that is 1 over 2. Then to find the B, you are making emphasis that you're finding it difficult calculating your period. Okay, the period is the distance between the two highest points, or the distance between the two lowest points. Now for this image now, here is the highest point 1, and here it will be your 2. So to get my period, this will be period will be equal to pi over 2, that's positive pi over 2, minus negative that should be 3 pi over 2, 3 pi 3 pi over 2. So this will be pi over 2 plus 3 pi over 2, which will be 4 pi over 2, and this will be equal to 2 pi. Now to get our B, the formula is 2 pi over the period, and we have gotten the period to be 2 pi over 2, so that will leave our answer to be 1. And then for C, it now depends. So let's write this equation both as observing it as a sine or as a cosine. So for sine, I'll have my amplitude is 2 sine. Let me bring this closer here. So this will give me 2 sine. My B is 1, so I can just write 1 here. Then x, then my D will be positive 1 over 2. Now let's know if we are going to have a phase shift. Now what I'm going to do is, if I'm to locate my sine, I am looking for the point that stay at the center. Point that stay at the center close to the y-axis. That is how you find your sine. To locate sine, that is for sine equation. For sine equation, you locate a point starting at the, okay, let me call it middle, closest to the y-axis. But if it is for cosine, what we are looking for is the lowest. Now for cosine, we are looking for the cosine equation, we locate the should I say the peak point or lowest point closest to the y-axis. Now just like I said earlier, I don't know if you heard that part when I was saying that for equations, to form a tree equation, anyone can pick any point. For example, in this number 1, let me show you something. I might decide, okay, the point I want to pick closest to the y-axis is this point. So because of that, this graph has no phase shift when it comes to sine. So therefore, my answer will be 2 sine x plus 1 over 2. From the option I have here, it is P. Now let me do it again for cosine. Cosine will be the amplitude doesn't change, which is 2 cos. The B doesn't change, then the D doesn't change, plus 1 over 2. Now, just like I said here, for cosine equation, locate the peak point or lowest point closest to the y-axis. All right, there are 2 points here closest to the y-axis, that is the highest point and the lowest point. To me, this point here makes more sense, but someone else might decide to pick this point here. So let me call this one point 1 and let me call this one point 2. So let me write the cost equation locating using point 1. So how am I going to do that? If I'm observing here, that means that the phase shift for this cosine will now be pi over 2, because this point or the x-axis, the value here is pi over 2. So that means that my phase shift will now be pi over 2. Will it be positive or negative? It's going to be positive. That is plus pi over 2. It is positive because if the phase shift should fall at the left hand side, the equation will be positive. But if the phase shift should fall on the right hand side, the equation will be negative. Now, another thing we need to observe here is, what is the position of this point? Is it down or is it up? So because it is down, our amplitude will be negative. So that will leave our answer to be negative x plus pi over 2 plus 1 over 2. Now, someone else might say, okay, someone else might observe point 2. Okay, if I'm to use point 2, let me write that up here because I don't have much space down there. If I'm to observe point 2 will now be, still be the same 2 cos, then in bracket x, it doesn't change. My vertical shift doesn't change. But remember, I'm observing point 2 because these 2 points are closest to the y-axis. So at this point, this point occurred in pi over 2. So this pi over 2, is it positive or negative? It will be negative because the phase shift occurred at the right hand side. So that means the equation will be negative pi over 2. Then let's also observe the position. Did it start up or down? It stayed up. So that means my amplitude will be left as positive. Now, why I'm doing this is that from this option, most of the time, they observed a particular point. For example, if I'm to look up this first answer I got, -2 cos this, I won't find it here. I won't find it here at all. So, but I found this one and this, which is y. So that means that the point that they actually observed to create this option is this. Now, this worksheet did 2 things for us. One, it helped us know how to read graph. Now, 2, it helps us observe the options in graph if it is not relating to the answer we have. That means that there is still option to, they see a tendency of picking different points, especially if they're at the same pace away from the y-axis. But please, if this question comes in as questions that are not optional, I will advise that maybe 1, you list all the equations for them, or 2, you try to pick the one closest to the y-axis. Now, if the both of them have the same pace, just like this number 1, what you do is you pick the one that actually makes sense. For me now, if I'm the one driving an equation for this first graph, 2 doesn't make sense to me because the loop is quite short. I'll pick point 1 because point 1 makes more sense to me than point 2. But I don't know, they decided to pick point 2. So that means if it's an optional question, if you pick point 1, didn't see the option, just know that maybe they picked another point closest to the y-axis that is not the one you solved with. So asking if the question, your answer is actually correct. Yeah. No, I just saw what you did. Sorry. Let me even say that this is not Y. This is A. That is P and A. That is correct. Then you did something. You observed. I don't even know. Yes, you observed this one, but because the equation didn't match, you just picked this one. Do you understand? So like you kind of okay. they kind of look alike, so you just pick that one. I saw what you did, but no problem. But no problem. The answer you got is actually correct. All right. So for the second graph, our A is um our A is 2. Our D is 0. We don't have any vertical shift. Then the B, our B is 2, because difference 0 pi, 2 pi over pi will give us 2. Then the C depends. So let's solve this. Let's derive this equation observing sign. So this will be 2 sine 2. Let's say x. There's no this. So let me know if I'm adding anything here. No. So let me know if I'm adding any phase shift. So I'm looking for the point closest to the y-axis that's there at the middle. So this is the first middle point closest to the y-axis. So the first middle point, the other middle point. So let me call this point point 1, and let me call this point 2. So if I'm to start here, my phase shift will now be positive pi over 4. But if I'm to observe this, positive, and the amplitude will be positive because it is middle up. So it will be positive. But if I'm to observe the other one, it will be 2 sine. This doesn't change, x. But because this is middle down, it will now be negative pi over 4. So and remember that the amplitude will be negative because it is middle down. So this will be negative. So which one applies to what we have here? That is y. Sorry, that is L. Me and y. That is L, because I don't have negative 2 sine. No, I don't have it. So that means it's L. So that simply means that for the sine rule, what they used was 0.1. Do you understand? Just like I said, if this has no option, I'll pick the one that makes more sense to me. That is the one that has more of the loop. And another thing is that most of the time when it comes to sine, try and avoid negative amplitude as much as possible. Not that you can avoid it totally, but try as much as possible to avoid negative amplitude when it comes to sine. Then cosine, that one doesn't care. It even enjoys having negative signs, but I'm just trying to explain from the options. Okay, so that is that for this one. Now let's observe this as cosine. Let's derive the cosine equation. So that means that this was the one they used. So this would be sine cos 2, doesn't change, no vertical shift. So let's know our phase shift. So I'm looking for the point that's there at the top, closest to the y-axis. So no need to move far because I have the one on y-axis already. So that means there will be no phase shift. So that will leave my answer to be 2 cos 2x. So that means here will be L and Y. So I don't know what you did here. Okay, you actually tried, but there was a problem. You picked this point here. You picked this point to be pi over 2. No, this point is not pi over 2. I've taught you how to find midpoints. Actually, yes, and when we are plotting graph. But let me now teach you when you have something like this. If you are looking for this point here, let's say this point, we want to find this point. 0 plus pi divided by 2 will give us pi over 2. So that means that this point here is pi over 2. Now, but this point here is between 0 and pi over 2. So what will it be? 0 plus pi over 2 divided by 2 will give us pi over 4. So actually, you made use of pi over 2 instead of pi over 4. And another thing was, for your course, you used negative 2 cos 2x. No, it's not supposed to be negative, it's positive because it started at the top. When cosine starts at the top, positive. When it starts at the bottom, negative. Now, when cosine starts at the middle up, anything that is middle up, anything that has to do with up is positive. Anything that has to do with down is negative. So that is how you know the positive and when it should be. All right, so let's look at the third question. From the third question, sorry. Okay, so from the third question, our amplitude will be a 3 minus 1, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so amplitude is equal to 1. Our A is 1. Our D will be 2. Then our B will be equal to 2. Now, I saw what you did here. Please, it is not negative 2 because what we are looking for is the absolute value of B. So absolutes actually mean that we don't care the sign. The sign doesn't really count. So that is why it's called the absolute value of it. Now, I really love what you did in picking out the point when you actually know, okay, this is supposed to be 3 pi over 4. Now, whatever it is you did there, that was exactly what I explained in 2, trying to find, okay, if this should cut here, so that means it's the midpoint between this and this. So you have to find the midpoint between the two actual points. So for me to put this, let me write my sign first. So this will be sine. My amplitude is 1. Okay, let me just write 1 here. Then my B is 2, so that will be 2x. I don't know if it will have a phase shift, but let me come here and write plus 2. Now, also remember that the phase shift can actually be negative. So it depends on the position of the D. Most of the time, the D can be at the lower part of the y-axis. That will make it negative because this graph mostly is positive, positive. Please take note of that. D can also be negative. So let me start here. I'm looking for my phase shift is 2. So I'm looking for the middle line that's steered exactly or closest to the y-axis. So no need for me to move, right? I already have one here down. That means that there will be no phase shift, so C will be 0. Then another thing I should observe is that it's steered at middle down. So if it's middle down, the amplitude will be negative. So that will leave my answer to be negative 2 sine 2x. Sorry, negative 1 sine 2x plus 2, which is same as negative sine 2x plus 2. Now let me even check if there is something like that. Sine negative 2 sine. Okay, no. So that means that they picked another point different from what I picked. Okay. So aside from these points, there are still other points closer to the y-axis. Maybe they chose not to pick this one. So let me call this point 1, which I've just written out now. The next middle points that stay close to y-axis is this point 2 and this point 3. Now let me observe my sign rule. Let me write my sign rule observing the point 2. So this will give me equal to it doesn't change. That is sine 2x plus 2. Now what will be my phase shift? My phase shift will now be positive pi over 2. Remember, if the phase shift is at the left, the equation will be positive. At the right, the equation will be negative. So this is what I will have. Now, what if I'm observing point 3? Remember, it started with middle up, so my amplitude will be positive. So for the other one will be sine 2x negative pi over 2 plus 2. And it will also give me middle up. So this will also be positive. So let's check which of this I have. So that means I have sine then plus 2. So that will leave the answer to be n. So here will be n. That is for sine equation. So that means that what they observed was this point. All right, so that is it. So maybe I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say at this point. Okay, let me come up here and observe the cosine. So the cosine will be cos. Let me wipe this out. The cosine will be cos 2. It doesn't change, and this one doesn't change. So I have to find a point that started at the peak or the bottom closest to the y-axis. Now I have 2 points here, point 1 and point 2. So for me to observe this, if I'm picking point 1, that means my phase shift will be pi over 4, and it will be positive pi over 4. Will it be, will the amplitude be positive or negative? The amplitude will be positive because this is the point at the top. Now let's assume I'm observing point 2. So this will be cos. This one doesn't change. Then this one doesn't change. So that will leave this to be negative pi over 4. Now remember this there at the bottom. So that means the amplitude will be negative. All right. To me, when it comes to cos, the point that makes sense to me is 1. So let me know the one I'll actually see from the option. Okay, so I saw the first one. From the option, I saw the first one, which is D. So that means what they observed to get the options they have up there is the first point. Now, just this is very, very simple. All you just have to do know that your amplitude, your vertical shift doesn't change. What will change is your phase shift depending on the point you are picking. That's just it. Now for the fourth one, from here our amplitude will be okay. Let me see what you did. All right, I think your problem actually started when you didn't observe the absolute value of B and you just use -2. What you solved, you kind of solved a magic for me. I love the question mark you added in your question because you got ND, but you don't know actually how you got ND, but that's fine. So for the fourth one, our A is equal to 2 and D is equal to 0 and B is equal to, okay, B is the distance between the two, up 1, pi over 2 and 3 pi over 4. Sorry, that is supposed to be 3 pi over 2. So that means here will be 3 pi over 2 and here will be negative pi over 2. So to get my period will be 3 pi over 2 plus pi over 2, which will give me is positive because positive, positive, negative 3 pi, 4 pi over 2, which is 2 pi. And B will now be 2 pi over the period, 2 pi equal 1. So the period here is 1. So let me wipe this out. So the period is 1. Now the C actually depends. Okay, now let me write the sine equation. So this will be sine. My amplitude will be 2 sine. This will be 1. Let me just write 1. There's no phase shift. Sorry, there's no vertical shift. It's 0. So for the phase shift, so I'm looking for a point closest to the, that's there at the middle closest to the y-axis, which is this. So at this point, I don't need a phase shift, which is 2 sine x. It will be negative because it started middle down. So let me check if I'll see this in my option or I should consider other points. So I actually saw this in the option, so there's no need for me to consider other point. It's in the option actually. But remember that you can still consider this point too, depending. All right. So let's observe the cos. My amplitude doesn't change. So that will be 2 cos 1x. Now, what's cos asking us for? It's asking us for the point that stay at the top or bottom closest to the y-axis. So I have 2 points here. This is point 1, and then I have point 2. So let me write this observing point 1. So if I'm observing point 1, that means that my phase shift will now be negative pi over 2. When it comes to the equation, it will be positive pi over 2. And remember, it's still at the top, so my amplitude will be positive. Now let me observe point 2, then I will now check which one I have for my option. This will be the same thing, cos 1 bracket x. So here will not be negative pi over 2 because the phase shift here started at positive pi over 2, the equation will be negative. And remember, it started at the bottom point, so that means the amplitude is minus 2 cos this. So let me check which of this I have in my option. So they made use of this one. So that will be, the other one was R, and then me and Y, sorry. Then the other one that just gave me negative 2x is O. This will be O. There's no Y here. I don't know why I keep writing Y. Okay, so this will be O and then R.